Welcome to Empowered Returns, a show that surfaces forward-thinking real estate advice that investors and developers need to help them invest smarter and build better.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Empowered Returns. I am PT Vineburgh, founding partner here at CHARLESGATE, and I am very happy to have Jay Hirsh, the managing partner of Jumbo Capital Incorporated, here with us today. Jay, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. So let's just kind of jump right in. So you founded Jumbo in 2009.
This feels like an SNL skit,
Kind of.
Like, we're going to talk about sweaty balls.
Maybe. I mean, we kind of both have that Chris Farley
Got an
thing going
NPR
on.
stereo vibe in here.
Oh man, well, we'll have some fun with this, but we also, we got to inform the audience. We'll talk about all things Jumbo,
Okay.
and and real estate design development here. So you founded Jumbo in 2009. You had been at a couple of kind of bigger institutional shops prior to that. Kind of give us the backstory on how Jumbo came to be.
Sure thing. I named it after my alma mater, Tufts University. We used to sit around and drink beers and do other fun stuff and talk about how there were a bunch of guys that were already doing internships in real estate and a couple engineers as well. So we were like, maybe one day we'll start like a real estate firm. We'll call it like Jumbo Commercial or something. And so when it was time for me to leave my previous job, I took the name and ran with it.
There you go.
Yeah, so prior to Jumbo, I worked at New Boston Fund. It was a private equity fund. The founders were like some pretty heavy hitters in Boston at the time.
Yeah.
Kind of created urban redevelopment and urbanization. The Rappaports, learned a lot from them. It was an awesome environment to kind of skin my teeth, and they had a great open door policy and way too many people working there. So you could just walk around and pick all these smart people's brains. The head guy just kind of liked to collect, people to work with.
Yeah.
So it was awesome. It
Cool.
was like getting a master's. But I would say I thought I was going to be a lifer there.
Yeah.
But then they sent me to like some market. I want to say I went to like New Jersey, and I met an operator, and I was like, "What is this operator thing?" And it was all like the joint venture people they would partner with.
I thought you were going to say that they sent you to Jersey, and that just puts you over the edge.
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah.
And
Little shot at Jersey.
I
Take
got exposed to the operators, and I was like, I want this job because it's like all the fun parts of commercial real estate without the like corporate, bullshit of like working within the fund.
Yeah.
And I kind of made a plan at that point where I was like, how many transactions do I have to get under my belt? How many square feet? How many types of deals? Before I feel comfortable leaving and doing this on my own. And I don't think I ever got to those totals. Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns collapsed, and the world is a different place. And after going out for lunch one day, I came back, they fired like 25 people. And I was like, okay, well, I survived that one. Then like a month later, I came back, they fired like another 25 people. And I was like, okay, maybe we should start thinking about like Act 2. So I looked and found a deal that I'd been working on for a while, and I put an offer in under New Boston Funds, but they had no intention whatsoever of buying it. And I hired a lawyer from inside the firm to help me with the purchase and sale agreement. He was a super religious guy who would go to church every day at lunch.
Every day at lunch.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I didn't know that. And within like 2 days of helping me with this thing, he ratted me out.
Yeah. You got to do a little more recon if you're going to try
So
that.
at that point, they were like, guess what? The next phase of layoffs is starting now, and you're the first casualty of the
Oh, no way.
phase
So
3.
that was it?
Yeah, well, they gave me like a severance package and like some time. And I finally got like a corner office for like my final month there.
Okay.
And that was kind of the start of Jumbo.
Nice.
It was a freezer warehouse, still own it. And it's been a great asset. And
I was going to say, we'll get into that later, but you got to have like a favorite asset.
That's my favorite.
Is
yeah.
it? That's it?
Totally.
All right, so we'll jump. And then is it because it was the first?
Because it's the first, it's absolute triple net. I don't have to do anything for it.
Yeah.
It just cash flows.
All right.
It's been a really good deal.
So that's actually a pretty good segue, right? Like I think you're very unique, at least, from my perspective in that Jumbo, you are very unique as a person.
Thank you.
Yeah. Jumbo is very unique because you guys are really diversified in the different asset classes you're in. I mean, a lot of the other people in our local marketplace, and at least it seems like all your assets are Massachusetts.
That's correct. So I was at New Boston Fund. They would like send me all over the country, and I would parachute into a market for like 48 hours, and I'd have to be the expert of the market.
Yeah, that doesn't
kind of realized over time that I was just the dumb out of town money.
Right. Yeah.
And then another kind of epiphany moment happened for me is the Rappaports used to donate a ton of money to the Federal Reserve like research grant. So down in Boston is the Federal Reserve Bank.
Yeah.
By like NEBO or whatever.
Right.
And they used to have lecture series. So the Rappaports like would donate money for these lecture series. And this one lecturer came in one time, and he was talking about how like Massachusetts kind of had an island economy where housing prices were going to continue to rise, cost of living would keep rising. The workforce would become more stratosphere to like, advanced degree people, and be harder for, workforce, housing, type of occupants and stuff.
Yeah.
And he was spelling out how this is kind of like a bad scenario for Mass. And I could kind of envision what he was talking about, and it made sense. But for real estate investing, it sounded like a
pretty good scenario, right?
I was like, wait, there's high barriers to entry and people willing to overpay, huh? So,
people with big jobs,
those two kind of moments
right.
kind of like solidified my investment thesis, which is really just Massachusetts. Like, I live it, breathe it, work it every day. I've never left the Commonwealth.
Right.
So it's kind of easy for me to understand all these different product types as long as it's here in Mass.
Okay. So a lot of the clients we work with are strictly multifamily or, in other arenas that, we're not involved in day to day, like industrial or retail or office, but you guys have a wide cross section of assets. And can you talk a little bit about that? And, was that part of the strategy going in when you decided to create Jumbo, or did that kind of evolve naturally? What are you going after now? What won't you touch? Well,
sure.
I don't want to we'll ask some questions one at a time.
Yeah, a lot of questions there. I'm going to do my best here.
I know. You're a tough guy, so you should be able to process all that quickly.
Yeah, so I mean, my exposure to all the range of asset class happened kind of early in my life. My mom and dad started a generic pharmaceutical company in Southie. And so growing up, I spent a ton of time in these pharmaceutical plants. So it's like you might know them as CGMP facilities now. So it was just, working packaging lines, and, that was my summer vacation a lot of times, where I'd just spend, the whole break, working and making money. And I loved it. I was kind of always wanted to be next to my parents. I was always kind of a shy kid. So it kind of worked. Like, they'd be like, you want to go to camp or work on the packaging line? I was like, no brainer, packaging line. But, I learned a ton, and I got exposed to these, cool manufacturing facilities. And that's still my favorite part of the real estate I do, is learning about these tenants and these industrial processes and stuff. So I always kind of had the industrial side. My mom and dad were successful, but Southie was a dump back then. And with the extra cash flow they were making, they would start buying triple deckers.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So me and my mom would show up at an auction for a triple decker
in Southie,
in tough neighborhood in Southie that Whitey Bulger's probably created some bad publicity for.
Right.
And it would just be my mom in the bank, bidding on a triple decker for $50K. So when I wasn't in the packaging line, I was helping them, rehab or flip these things. And at one point, we probably had 30 of them.
Oh, wow.
Fortunately, my parents, they love real estate, but they're not very good at it. So it's my mom and dad were it's just too much to deal with. We're selling them all. That was 20 years ago.
Too bad CHARLESGATE was just getting started.
Yeah,
I mean, we could have just taken over managing.
Looking back on it, I was why don't you just hire a guy?
We could have been the triple net guys. We could have been your refrigeration warehouse for them.
Yeah.
It's all right.
And then after they got into triple deckers, they got into marinas. So it's I had, they bought a marina in Hingham that was a World War II shipyard. So it was 50 acres with 30 buildings on it. So
you're moving on up, right?
I
Like
was
Southie
terrible.
Industrial right into the boats.
I was a terrible dockhand, but I was really good at like, carpentry, like plumbing, electrical stuff. So I hung out with all like the facilities guys and like further honed my craft.
Okay.
And then after college, that's when I got involved at New Boston Fund and kind of helped me understand the finance side. So I always kind of knew like the product types, the operations of it. And then, New Boston helped me kind of understand how to capitalize them and how it all works with your lenders and your partners.
Cool. Actually, that's a pretty good segue because I want to talk about some kind of memorable projects.
Two good segues if people are paying attention
I know.
at home.
I like that word. It's a great word. Let's talk about the Ham Shipyard.
Sure.
Right. That was kind of cool because it encompassed a lot of different asset classes within it.
Yeah.
Obviously, it sounds like it started back, when you were a kid and they acquired that. As I'm deducing that was sort of like the origin of it.
I stopped working at the pharmaceutical plants when I was like 17 and started working at the shipyard.
Yeah.
Even though we probably owned it a couple of years before that.
Okay.
And that was crazy transaction because my parents had to assemble like 6 different sites over like a decade and then do a mixed-use development, entitling it in like the most NIMBY place in Massachusetts, Hingham. We love it, but like they're tough with their zoning bylaws and whatnot. Yeah. And then further complicating it was the MBTA commuter boat going through there. So that had to, they had to have an appropriate size parking lot for the commuter boat and, doing all the land swaps and all the entitlement. That took probably like 10 years. So my parents, when they first got into it, they thought they'd be, in and out of this thing in 3 years. It's 30 years later, we still own it and still like there's stuff to do with it. So
So what is talk a little bit about the more recent history of it over the past decade and then what's on the horizon there?
We entitled, I don't know, probably like 300 units of housing. It was like 286,000 square feet of retail. It's probably 60,000 square feet of office, so it is true mixed use. The housing is for sale and for rent. We divested all the land and all the permits and just held on to the marina and a couple extra parcels. And my favorite claim to fame is my parents brought in 5 liquor licenses, so that was kind of cool as well.
Sure, there are a lot of grateful people in Hingham.
Yeah, and they get good use out of them. And
good.
Yeah, it's been a fun project.
What are a couple other deals that you've done that kind of stand out to you as memorable, besides obviously your first one there and the shipyard?
I really enjoy the development stuff. I look at that kind of more tactical. In this part of the economy, maybe there probably should be less development, but I think most of the development will be focused on housing. The state definitely has a shortfall of housing units, so I could, I think we'll still see some tower cranes driving around, but definitely not for like office space, unfortunately. But yeah, a memorable one. Our first deal together, that went really well. In Alston.
Yeah, Penniman.
That was kind of my first foray into the for sale housing, and luckily I had a good broker to liquidate the assets and make some good returns for everybody.
Good. Yeah, that was a fun one. So let's talk a little bit about Jumbo itself, right?
Sure.
You're obviously the fearless leader, and I will say, I kind of have to pump your tires because you're on our podcast right now. But I gotta say, like, you've got great people. First of all, like everyone that works at Jumbo's been absolutely awesome to deal with over the years, and the retention's been super high. Like I can't really remember anyone that I've worked with that's not still there. Right? They're all there. So how much of your day to day and how much focus are you putting on just building that kind of culture where you have that kind of retention and that kind of loyalty and people that, really love working for you and for the firm?
Yeah, I mean, so me personally, I don't think I'm like anything special. I think I have a really good memory and I can recognize a good idea. So I stole New Boston Fund's ideas on, how to organize it, what type of services we would provide and how how to create a good culture.
Yeah.
So we're, totally vertically integrated. We do all our own property management. We do our own accounting. We do our own construction management. We can handle all the acquisition, the finance activity. So we feel like it yields a better product for the tenants, yields a better investment for the investors, yields a better partner for the lenders. So I think that kind of philosophy trickles down. But at the end of the day, and whenever someone's hired, I make it known to them. I just want what's best for them in life. If not working here is the best outcome for them, then that's totally cool. Luckily you'll get to work together for a while, but at the end of the day, you only really have one advocate for yourself in life, and that's yourself. And so just try and kind of create it as a fun, knowledge based environment where I'm not really watching the clock on people or grinding them on their hours, as long as they're getting their deliverables done. And that seems to resonate with people. Pre-pandemic, I kind of put in a flex policy idea.
Yeah.
I got it from Cambridge Savings Bank though, because they kind of educated me about it, and I was like, oh, that sounds like a good idea, because my employees keep telling me like, hey, I'm going to fly to San Francisco on Tuesday. Is it okay if I work on the plane the whole time and don't count it as a vacation day? And I was like, it's kind of a gray area. But
solid 6-hour flight.
now we call it a flex day.
Okay.
And that definitely has helped post-pandemic for sure.
Yeah.
So everyone has like 3 weeks of flex days.
You still have that like hidden golf simulator in the wall?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. That helps.
Yeah.
Definitely. How's your golf game these days, by the way?
It's still terrible.
Is
but,
it? Yeah, mine too. I stink. It's fine. Whatever.
It is fine.
I haven't even played yet this year. Do you know that?
Wow.
I know.
That's
June
terrible.
7th. And I have not played a round of golf. Isn't that brutal?
Yikes.
Yeah.
Hopefully you're selling units though, right?
Exactly. So what's the biggest challenge facing the real estate industry overall today? I know you kind of made an inference earlier about, office being tough, but,
Yeah.
Again, any particular asset classes that you're sort of gung-ho about right now, others that you've just kind of stepped away from, and what are the challenges as you're trying to, put deals together either as a buyer or potentially as a seller on any of your existing assets?
Yeah, I mean, we are in a funky little spot. Kind of going back to an earlier question of how I came across all the product types. Initially, it was kind of like finding the deals that I could do so I could build the track record out. And a lot of those were office spaces early on. And I'm a huge fan of the office. I go there every day. I love it. It's fun. It's productive. It's, good way to get out of the house as well. But my mom was always like, artificial intelligence and telecommuting. Like, are you concerned with those things at all? And, I kind of was. So I'd say like 4 years ago, we kind of stopped buying as much office and focused more on industrial spaces, maker spaces, flex type of spaces, manufacturing spaces. Spaces that you couldn't replicate in your basement or your garage.
Okay.
And that's kind of what drew me into real estate in the first place. I really love learning about tenants and their technology and their process, and being a partner and helping them realize those dreams.
Yeah.
And a good landlord really is a good partner. So
no, I mean, we talk about that all the time. I think that's the way you got to approach every relationship you're in, right?
totally.
With
Yeah,
your
I always
clients.
say to tenants, I'm not winning unless you're winning. You let me know what I can do to help you get the most out of your space. So it's a real asset for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, we just kind of did less office space. And then the economy was a good spot where we felt like tactically we could do some development deals. So we did some of those. But right now it's tough. I'm kind of at a loss. We recently bought some retail, and I feel really good about it. But every day I come home, my wife's ordering Peapod, and it's people aren't going to the supermarket. I'm worried about.
Right.
Apple just introduced new VR headsets. You're gonna have to that's going to eliminate some real estate demand somewhere, I bet, right?
Yeah, I saw that the other day.
Amazon, I wonder like how many square feet of actual retail does Amazon destroy and how much like square feet of industrial
do they create?
Does that create? It's like they eliminate like 1,000 square feet and it creates like 1 square foot of actual warehouse.
We get to know what that ratio is. Yeah, that's an interesting one.
So yeah, I mean, I'd say the asset classes, it's not, I'm definitely no Nostradamus here, but again, I still like the maker type spaces. The world has a lot of kind of headwinds, and we're gonna have to engineer some solutions for stuff. And I think Massachusetts is a very well positioned state to help kind of engineer those solutions. So during the pandemic, the life science community went bananas. That's definitely cooling off, but those types of user groups are still looking for the same type of space that other user groups that are manufacturing better batteries now, metallurgic printing, solar panels, all these new techs that we kind of need to maybe combat climate change and engineer a solution, or we're going to benefit from all the infrastructure money that has recently been passed. So
yeah.
So there's still definitely a lot of tenants walking around out there looking for good productive space, but it's different than it was like 24 months where everything was just like white hot.
Right. Yeah, totally. Is there anything that you're very adamant about that you think the vast majority of people in our industry would disagree with you on? Putting you on the spot on this one, but I like this question.
So I'm not like a huge contrarian. I love real estate, but it's not rocket science. It's heavily correlated to the Federal Reserve and their funds rate.
Right.
And when those are low, those real estate asset values appreciate. When those are high, values erode.
Yeah.
Again, just kind of going back to the housing shortfall. I'm bullish on that. I'm also well aware of, the silver tsunami coming towards us in terms of our aging population. And
yeah.
Every day, I think it's like 10,000 Americans turn 80. And
my dad will be 80 in a couple weeks.
Yeah. And we're not even at the apex of it. Like, right. I guess in like 6 years, it'll be like 20,000.
Oh, wow.
So, having some elderly parents that I love and take care of, and I definitely like that's reminding me kind of every day, like there needs to be more product to kind of help them.
Yeah.
One of my uncles-in-law was talking about how he's converted a couple houses out in San Fran into like mini assisted living facilities where he rents them out by the bedroom. So I was like, that's not a bad idea. So I'm doing a little research on that.
Sammy mentioned it to you, but you've got to come see that one property we have for that.
Yeah, I think that might not be a bad idea.
No, it'd be sick for that place. So, yeah, and it's not mini either, so it could be pretty cool. We'll talk about that offline. Where do you see Jumbo going in the next year, 3, 5? What's your kind of goal for the goals for the company and you personally and.
Yeah, I'm not like a big kind of 5-year plan guy.
Okay.
I look at the market as a river. I can't really make sellers. So it's just kind of fishing along the river and waiting for that deal to float by that you really like and have a lot of conviction for, and doing your best to kind of pull it onto the shore. So I'd say my vision for the next 5 years is kind of the status quo. I'm not going to be the biggest landlord in Boston. I don't really want to be. I like my spot. I think I'm at 17, so hopefully I can maintain that and, exit some of the deals, make some good returns, and find some new ones, and hopefully get them at a good basis.
Nice. So you obviously mentioned the diversification of your asset classes, and then we've talked a little bit about the current challenges in the market between just the capital markets in general, rates, I think you guys are pretty uniquely positioned in that you have the ability to pivot where maybe you've gone into a deal thinking one thing, and now as the climate's changed, you're nimble enough to go in a different direction. Kind of, can you speak to that as far as anything you have going on currently, or is that kind of a component of how you're approaching deals right now, given all the volatility that's out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's being able to be nimble is like a necessity, because every deal I have changes in some way, shape, or form. And that's kind of informed how we've gone after some deals. We typically want a big site that's flexible in nature and can accommodate a variety of different uses, and that allows you to be the most competitive with the tenants that are out there, because you don't always know like what industry is going to be still operational and what industries are kind of getting folded up. So that kind of helps mitigate the risk of just kind of owning some of these asset classes for sure.
Nice. Now, as far as sort of the capital markets specifically, how has that changed, some of your value prop to investors, or the perception that your investors are bringing as they examine, potential deals that you guys are doing, and how significantly has that changed over the past year?
I would say for new deals, like you can have maybe an easier value proposition scenario where it's like, okay, I've bought cash flow. My financing is good, not great, because, just where we're at in the market. But, in the next 3 or 5 years, I can forecast, with pretty good confidence that rates will come in, and maybe there's a refinance scenario where, the same revenue I'm generating at the same asset can yield a better cash flow, because you can shrink the financing costs with a lower interest rate. On existing deals where you have the benefit of low interest rates, there's definitely for sure some pressure to maintain and increase NOI, and there's definitely going to be some challenges for sure. It's not hard to envision these urban doom loop scenarios that you keep reading about.
Yep.
And there's definitely going to be some blood on the street, I think, for sure. Hopefully I don't have too much of my blood let out, but I definitely have an asset or two where it's got a good interest rate that's just gonna mature at some point, and NOI that's definitely taken a hit given the pandemic and telecommuting and artificial intelligence and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like we either need the government to kind of step in to bail out some of these assets, which I got to imagine they're thinking about, like, downtown New York, who owns these massive office towers,
right? With
pension funds,
yep,
and life insurance companies,
with very low rates that are maturing very soon, and
the fallout of that could be like have a real contagion effect. And it's not a blue versus a red state thing. Every state in the country has it. People have invested billions of dollars into their urban core,
right?
And people are holding, like, all sorts of financial institutes holding that paper. Like, what's going to happen to it? So
yeah. I mean, I think that's definitely the biggest macro variable facing the real estate industry, and how much that will trickle down into other areas. And again, like you had mentioned earlier, back to your Rappaport lecture there, but Massachusetts is pretty insulated, but not bulletproof.
No,
and that's something that I think we're starting to see in these little sort of micro anecdotes where, like, we are fundamentally in a phenomenal place to do business, but ultimately nothing is invincible. And
totally.
You've got to be ready.
The burbs are kind of better positioned. The office users, I kind of break it down into 3 cohorts. You have the fresh out of college guys, and girls. They need the office to be mentored and trained, and they get a lot of their social life from the office. And we all have fond memories of, going to the bar after work and, sipping a few cold ones with your coworkers and, maybe falling in love. And then the next cohort's like me and you.
Right.
We need to train people and need to mentor people. We are productive in the office because we have kids at home that kind of really shrink your window.
Suck the life out of us.
Window of
I love you guys,
opportunity to
but-
work, or shrink your actual physical space to do the work.
Yes.
So it's like we still get a lot of the office, but like you want to be an active, involved parent. So it's
Right.
like you don't need to be there all the time. And then the last cohort is like the empty nesters. Like they have boats, they have pools, they have country club memberships, they have second homes. They don't need to, get trained by anyone, and they probably don't want to train anyone. And all they kind of like about the office is, maybe once a week to help them kind of do some minor paperwork stuff, and they just love the memories of it.
Right.
So when you kind of factor all those three user groups, like I just see shrinking of demand for sure.
Yeah.
And it's like probably 65% of the footprint we needed.
Right.
But if you work 5 minutes away from your house and it's not a big commute and parking's easy and cheap, and there's a good deli that you like around the corner, or a simulator or something,
Right.
then you'll probably still go in there.
Yeah.
Me personally, when I look at my business, it's only my overhead is my payroll.
Right.
It's like 95% of it. My occupancy cost is only like 3% of my overhead.
Yep.
So it's like I can't rationalize spending that much in overhead on payroll and then not really having a place for all of these people to work and collaborate.
Right. Right.
And help them in the system, and also make sure that they're staying focused and stuff.
Yep.
So I think if those ratios are good and it's convenient enough, there will still be demand for it and use for it. But like we got overhang. Just looking at your background here, like that's a lot of office space that we might not need.
Right.
And that's the most annoying office space to get to. Like
Right.
it's expensive to occupy.
Can't park.
It's expensive to get to. It's expensive to eat lunch in there.
Takes forever to get to.
You got to ride crowded elevators and stuff.
Yeah.
And, so I really am nervous about like downtown cores. The other thing that's helped in the burbs is stuff has been converted. Stuff has been converted, to retail. Stuff has been converted to life science. Stuff has been converted to flex type of spaces. It's easier to kind of envision those adaptive reuses in the burbs than it is for a real tall, tight little site in the urban core.
Right.
So, it's gonna take a real creative group of people to kind of figure out the next 20 years, I think, and not having just empty, abandoned ghost buildings. So not to get too depressing.
No. I mean, look, that the reality is that's a pretty accurate assessment. And, I think there's always cities are cities, right? There's always going to be a demand to be in the city, work in the city.
Yeah.
I just think that as things are evolving, to your point, that demand's going to be less than it was. And that's a fact. And then it's just how do you reposition some of these assets in a way that, still makes them viable.
Real estate investing, like when your expectation of returns is sticky,
Right.
right? So if you were expecting 20s, you're still expecting 20s.
Right.
I have a site in Boston. It's a 1 acre site in Post Office Square. I could put a 60-story tower there, but
Right.
like, what is it going to be of is the question.
Right.
When we bought the thing, we were like, oh, office, no brainer.
Right. No.
And now it's like,
Yeah.
that's not happening.
Yeah.
And then
I
I'd love to do multifamily there, but
Right.
what I have to build it to, I can't like finance it to.
Right.
So,
Right.
I'm one of those guys that wants to have a shovel-ready project. So, I am trying to find someone to help me entitle it.
Right.
But, at the end of the day, everyone's kind of projecting out like in 5 years, this will
Right.
be cool.
Right.
Unless you've raised a fund and you have like all this cash burning in a hole in your pocket. Like,
Right.
you know, you're going to be kind of patient. And I've noticed that as well on the tenant side. The tenants that are like, you know, have the big balance sheet and, you know, have a going concern and, you know, they're pausing. They're not investing new capital. You know, the startup tenants that are trying to either advance their tech or get to commercialization that raise all this money and have the cash just burning, they're still full steam ahead. So luckily we're able to kind of captivate those types of tenants in this marketplace. And then there's, you know, a whole set of tenants that were getting funding before, and now like everyone wants yield with their cash. No one wants like value add upside on the, you know, the equity side. So those tenants are kind of SOL, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So it's a real challenge.
Yeah.
And that's kind of informed some of our deals in terms of like what we're targeting. We like big, flexible campus type sites where I have cash flow in place that's not going to like blow anybody's hair back completely, but it's cash flow.
Right.
And that allows us to be patient and tactical and flexible.
Yeah. Okay.
And because of the size of these campuses, there's a number of different ways to kind of skin the cat.
Yep. So we'll kind of wind it down. You a reader? You a book guy? You had more of like a TV, like you know.
I used to read
shows.
a ton, and then I started my own business, and you know, it's definitely more fun, but you work way more hours, and you definitely take work home with you. My routine is I try to come home as early as possible when I'm coaching sports. You know, I got to do a practice, so most days I'm leaving the office like 3:30 in the spring.
Yeah.
I come home, you know, coach whatever I have to coach, then help the wife put the kids to bed, and you know, I'm not done putting people to bed till like 9.
I know.
So if there's like something I have to read, I'm like reading it like you know, 9 to midnight. And then I need like an hour of like decompression. So like I'll watch like Netflix till like 1 a.m.
You got a good show you're into or what? I was going to say, if you're not a book guy, you're a show guy. Like I'm not a book guy, right? DeMella's the book guy. I am all about the
You know what I really
shows.
like? I like Prime. And there's documentaries all over Prime that I really enjoy.
Okay.
So I watched one on Niagara Falls the other day.
Oh, nice. There you go.
I like history documentaries. I rewatch like Ken Burns documentaries all the time.
Okay.
But yeah, I'll also watch like some good fiction.
Yeah.
That Schwarzenegger show is not terrible.
Really?
Yeah, the Fubar or whatever.
I haven't heard about that.
Yeah,
All
that
right.
one's on Netflix. Yeah, so then like I'm in bed at 1 and helping the wife get the kids ready to school at 7:30, and the whole thing starts all over again.
Yeah.
And then when I get to work, you know, it's less real estate that I'm touching, and it's more just kind of helping people solve problems.
Yep. So, all right. Jay Hirsh, managing partner, Jumbo Capital Incorporated. Awesome to have you with us. Thank you very much. And thank you to our audience for tuning in to this episode of Empowered Returns, and we will catch you next time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Empowered Returns. If you're a forward-thinking real estate investor or developer looking for actionable advice that will help you generate market-beating returns, make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast fix. I'm Mike DeMella with CHARLESGATE, and I'd love to connect on LinkedIn and further the conversation for any specific questions you may have. Thank you for listening.